be process oriented, on the day to day and really focus on that, because the results sometimes are so out of your control that the only thing you can kind of grasp onto is those controllables and your attitude, your effort, and what you bring to the field every day in those intangibles.
Well, welcome back, everyone, to another Masters of the Game interview. And today I get to introduce you to Anthony Bemboom. Now, I love talking with players that played at the school I played at, right? And Anthony, you're going to learn, was better than me. He made it further than me. But now I get to this opportunity to pick his brain and talk mindset and talk his experience and share his wisdom with you today. So if you hadn't guessed it already, well, hopefully you knew that I attended Creighton University. I guess I should start off. But Anthony actually attended Creighton University as well. And he's got a really fascinating story. He actually grew up in Sauk Rapids, Minnesota. I don't know where Sauk Rapids is, but he attended Sauk Rapids Rice High School, and then actually went the junior college route. So actually attended Iowa Western Community College in Council Bluffs, Iowa for 2 years, and then attended Creighton University, transferred there, and finished out his career there before going into Major League Baseball. He has played for the Tampa Bay Rays, Los Angeles Angels, Baltimore Orioles, and recently retired from the Detroit Tigers. I could go on and on about Anthony, but without further ado, Anthony, welcome to the show. Thank you for taking your time.
Matt, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. I'm excited to be here and talk a little shop with you.
Heck yeah. And such a small world too, because, I had, for those of you, who have not watched the Pat Venditti interview, go watch the Pat Venditti, also Creighton grad, and Dan Winkler. If you haven't watched that interview, go watch that one as well. But it's such a small world in general, but baseball world too, where, Anthony, you were just in Tampa at kind of a post-career event, and Dan Winkler was there, and I worked with Daniel for years, and it's such a really cool small world.
Yeah, I've known Pat for a while, just being around Creighton and being able to talk to him. Such a great guy and great person to learn from, really, not just baseball, but life in general. Just a great dude. And he was down at the MLB PAA Career Summit in last month, and so was Dan Winkler. So it was great to catch up with him. And yeah, like you said, small world, being able to kind of connect the dots with, Dan was able to work with you for a number of years, and just be able to talk about, kind of our experiences going through minor leagues, major leagues. And it was great to be able to share that transition of guys getting out of the game and focusing on kind of that transition into, your career after the game and what that looks like. And so it was really cool.
Yeah, it's cool. The Players Association is doing like that kind of symposium, right? To position, because that's one of the hardest things I think as a player is, I don't think it matters if you're at the high school, collegiate, professional level, right? You will transition at some point to life with like after sports, right? After that competitive kind of sports side of things. So it's really, really promising to hear. I think it's like the 5th year or 6th year, something like that the Players Association has put that on to help kind of ease that transition and take the scariness away a little bit of it.
Yeah, exactly. A lot of things they talk about is, you're going to be a former player a lot longer than you are a player. So it's help navigating that and using those transferable skills you learn throughout your life in sports, in baseball in particular, and then how you're going to use that in your next career, use it in your family to be a father, husband, and kind of grow off of that. So it was really a good, uplifting, weekend.
So good. Well, and I want to get into that here in a little while of kind of those transferable skills. I think it's important for, young players, young and old, to really understand that. But first question I always love to ask at the start of these is, what's one of the greatest memories you have from your baseball playing days?
Have a lot. I was able to be a part of like some really cool, really successful teams, both at the junior college level at Iowa Western, winning the JUCO national championship in 2010. And then, being with a couple teams at Creighton in my 2 years there, being able to win 2 straight conference championships and go to 2 regionals was really cool. But I think for my professional career, probably being a part of a team in 2023 with the Baltimore Orioles that won the AL East, one of the bigger turnaround stories, in recent history in baseball, and being able to be a part of that and also be, in the dugout during the divisional playoffs against the Rangers in Baltimore and then in Texas was probably one of the cooler experiences. Even though I didn't play, it was just kind of a full circle moment for me, and being able to experience that's something I always wanted to do. Everybody watches, playoff baseball at that time of the year and how intense it is, but to be able to be there in the dugout and be a part of that was something that I definitely will never forget and don't take for granted. And it was just, I get goosebumps talking about it because I can still remember, how loud the crowd was in Baltimore. And, that series didn't go the way we planned, but it was still really cool to be a part of. And it was kind of like just a culmination of everything personally and then everything as a team we worked for that year. So it was really special.
That's so cool. Yeah. The noise level, right, that you experience on the field, especially playoff time, like when it really matters, right? It's pretty darn amazing. And again, whether you've been on the field for that experience or in the crowd for that experience, like, what it's like, that how noisy it is. Well, and when I look at your path, right, coming up the junior college route and then going to play D1 and then, transition over to the majors and, through minor league ball, stuff like that. Walk me through that path. Like, why junior college first? Like, what was that journey like for you?
Yeah. So coming out of high school, I didn't have any Division I offers. I had kind of talks about walking on at different schools, but I knew that I could play at that level. So I knew once I got interest from junior colleges, I knew, and then obviously Iowa Western, a very storied junior college program. And once I visited there, I knew that's where I kind of wanted to go and start my career in college. And
Yes.
it was the best thing for me, really, just to kind of, learn the game and just kind of immerse myself in it and really kind of get away from home a little bit and grow up and be a little more independent and take things kind of into my own hands in terms of, school and baseball and just really be independent there. And then was fortunate enough to get that opportunity to play at Creighton and get a scholarship there. And was very grateful under Coach Service to be able to play on two really great teams in 2011, 2012. And really from there, I didn't know if I was going to get drafted until, right before the draft was in 2012 as a senior. So I was a 22nd round draft pick by the Angels in 2012, which they don't even have that many rounds anymore, which is kind of funny, but
Snuck in.
Yeah, made it in. I think that was back when they had like 40 rounds, but yeah, nevertheless, got that opportunity and just kind of took off and ran with it and just really tried to do everything I can to provide value for the team and just kind of stick around and prolong my career as much as possible. And then just kind of work my way through the minors, kind of hit every level along the way. And then finally got my opportunity, reach minor league free agency and signed with Tampa Bay going into the 2019 season and made my major league debut with them in May of 2019. So, and then from there, it was just kind of bounced around a lot, but it was also really great to be a part of some great organizations, meet some great people. And yeah, it's been a ride. And thinking back and reflecting on it, it goes fast, but at the same time, it was really special to be a part of a lot of that. So.
Oh my gosh. Yes. Well, and
yeah.
I'm curious because I want to break down kind of your career, right? Of, first of all, coming out of, Sauk Rapids, Minnesota, right? Not a huge town. And deciding to go the junior college route. I think sometimes, I come across athletes who, and I had that decision too, right? Of do I want to go JUCO route or walk on? And I chose kind of a different route to walk on, but why, I guess, did you know, like, I will play baseball? Did you always like have that dream and like you knew that like you needed to take that step no matter what to get the opportunity to go to the next level? Because a lot of kids will just be like, yeah, I didn't get the D1 off or whatever, I'm done. So where did that kind of, I don't know, drive, determination? Was it vision? Was it, I don't know, what was it for you?
Yeah, it was just that, internal desire. I think I always knew I wanted to play at that level. And then, once going through the recruiting process, there was Division II schools I was talking to, and then, being able to walk on at the University of Minnesota. But I knew I could play at that level. But I think once I visited Iowa Western and got a sense of what their program was like, how many guys they move on to the Division One level on a consistent basis, and a lot of guys get drafted. Some guys get drafted out of there as well. So it's really a good program. But I think the most important thing for me was like, okay, even if I go walk on, I'm probably not going to be able to get the opportunity to play right away at a Division One school. So being able to go to the junior college and get reps under my belt and grow and play a lot of games in a short period of time was extremely valuable for me, because I feel like I tell people this all the time. That's the best way you can learn, especially in baseball, and grow and get better, is just get reps under your belt. Just play the game. There's very little substitute for in-game experience, and that's really probably what propelled me to that next level.
That's a great point. And that's true of like every sport, right? It's like the more reps you can get, and you hear hockey like going out on the frozen pond and getting extra reps, or going to extra ice, or volleyball, going to the court, doing the extra practice. Like, it's just the reps really, they add up pretty quick, especially at that level. Now, what was the biggest transition for you from high school to like going to a really good
Iowa
baseball
Western
program?
Yeah, it was a lot. Like, I feel like every level that I went to, whether it was junior college, Division One, into pro ball, I always had to kind of rely on my preparation and work ethic to kind of give myself confidence, because sometimes I lacked that confidence and be able, almost that imposter syndrome, like I'm not good enough to belong here, or those self-doubts sometimes can creep in. But when you work hard, have that preparation, you're able to kind of give yourself that confidence that, hey, I did everything I can. Let's just go leave it all out there, and whatever happens, it's going to happen. And that kind of carried me throughout my professional career as well, every level that I hit. But I think it was a lot right away for sure. It was just a big culture shock going to, the focus was baseball every day, 2-day practices in the fall, and then games, a couple times a week on the weekends. And then in the spring, you're playing a ton of games during your regular season as well. So it's just a lot of baseball, in a short period of time. But like I said, I feel like that's kind of where I grew and just got that experience of learning the game and how to play the game the right way. And then once I got to Creighton, it was, just really refining those skills and how I could best provide value for the team.
Yes. Well, and I appreciate you saying that, right? Because like those feelings of the lack of confidence, the imposter syndrome, like, do I belong? I mean, those are natural things that I think, at least I think, and I know a lot of athletes think and go through, and things like that. And can you break down, like, because I think sometimes, like, when you hear like, oh, I prepared and I had the work ethic, stuff like that, how did you break that down? Like, when you were feeling yourself going down a path of that imposter syndrome, like, how did you work through and get to the point of, like, just, I don't know, taking act, doing something? Like, how did you work through that mentally and physically, honestly?
Yeah. It's a growth process for sure. It's something that you have to really practice every day. But I feel like one thing for me, every time I had those anxious feelings, leading up to a game or whatever it is, and that feeling of not belonging, I would always just take action and do something productive. I was like, I just got to do something. I can't just sit here and think about it. I'm going to get up and do something, whether it's go work out. I'm going to go in the cage and have a plan of, take a few extra rounds of BP. I'm going to, focus on this. And then once, as I grew through my professional career, it was like, okay, now I'm going to look at the scouting report a little bit more. I'm going to, look at this video and things that are a little more applicable to the mental side of the game. Just taking action in a purposeful way, I think, helped calm those feelings, because like I said, it just all, I relied on that preparation and work ethic to be able to give myself that confidence. So I think that was just being able to take action in some way.
And I think that's huge, right? And I thought a little before, right? The quicker you are to take action on that stuff, the better off you are, right? Because we all dwell in those, or can get stuck in those, and can dwell in those areas, right? Of something's going sideways, and chip away at confidence, or all sorts of different things. Talk to me a little bit about I'm really curious, when you got to the majors, sounds like the same kind of like, do I belong existed,
Mhm.
but was it different? Was it like next level? Was it just like,
Oh yeah.
yep, I've done this 3 times and we're going to do it? Like, because you're playing with the best at that level. So what was that like
Yeah.
for you?
Oh yeah, it's tough. A lot of people say, and I believe this to be true, it's hard to get to the big leagues, but it's even harder to stay there because there's so many guys that are coming through the minor leagues trying to take your job. And then there's other guys, at the major leagues trying to keep their job as well. But I think being able to, baseball is the ultimate test of consistency. So whatever you can do to be consistent and provide value in a consistent way, teams are going to want you. So for me, I found watching some of the other, you know, more successful players, I've played with multiple future Hall of Famers, most likely. And just watching them go about their business, they're very process oriented and they're very even keeled. Their emotions
Mm.
didn't get too high, didn't get too low. And I really, as my career went on, I tried to emulate that as best as I could and not get too high, get too low, and be process oriented, on the day to day and really focus on that because the results sometimes are so out of your control that the only thing you can kind of grasp onto is those controllables and your attitude, your effort, and what you bring to the field every day in those intangibles, really is what makes you consistent. It's not always your batting average. Your batting average is going to go like this no matter what throughout the year. It's being able to stay on that even keel that I've, observed through those top players that's what makes them so great. Obviously they have unbelievable talent, but their ability to stay consistent in things that they can control was really special to see.
That's interesting. So let's talk about this because consistent can be boring.
Mm-hmm.
Following a process can be boring.
Mm-hmm.
So how did you, and even the players you emulated, right? How did you work through that mental kind of battle that I imagine was going on of like, I don't feel like doing this today, or maybe skipping one day doesn't matter. It's not that big a deal. Like how did they kind of work through that? And how did you kind of take that and say, no, I'm going to choose to like go to the cage, go lift, like
Mm-hmm.
prepare this way, focus on the mental game this way. Like, how did you work through that? Cause I assume there were days you're like, I don't feel like doing this. I
Yeah,
assume.
definitely you have to pick your spots. It's a 162 game season. You're not going to be able to take the same amount of swings every single day. You're not going to take that same amount of reps just because your body takes that beating throughout the course of the year. So you got to pick your spots, definitely on the physical side and kind of know, that's where the experience comes into play and watching those guys that have the experience and knowing, okay, maybe today, if they're feeling good, they're only going to take a couple rounds of BP and call it good and, save a little energy for the game. Especially when July, August comes around, that's when everybody's body kind of starts to, wear down a little bit. But I think on the mental side, there's always something that you can do and there's always something that you can kind of prepare for, whether it's a scouting report. I was a catcher, so I was always, trying to over prepare mentally so that I could take in as much information as possible going into a game, whether it's a scouting report, heat maps, anything like that, so that I knew once the game, I had all that information so I could just make split second decisions and kind of rely on my gut and kind of go from there. So there was always something to do, preparation wise, whether it was mental, physical. Most of the time, it's scout report meetings, pitchers meetings, things like that. But a lot of things that you can do throughout the day to be productive. I always had a schedule. I always planned out my day, so I knew what I was doing almost minute by minute, at the field. Because I didn't just rely on, okay, I'm just going to go stretch, hit, and then kind of hang out and play cards. I always I had everything planned out kind of strategically. So I would, mentally be prepared for that game every night. And that's just the way I did it and the way I kind of had to do it to be, to stick around as much as I could.
Yes. Did that planning start in college or when you got to the, when you were
Probably
drafted
once
and
I,
went to the minor leagues up to the major leagues?
Yeah, probably once I was, in the minor leagues, I started to kind of really dive into that routine, just because every day can be so, like you said, so monotonous and almost seem like Groundhog Day every single day. A lot of times, a lot of guys don't even know what day of week it is because every day seems the same. College is a little bit different. I mean, it's routine oriented, but it's a little different because you have a couple midweek games and then you'll have your weekend series. But I think it's, in terms of professional baseball, it's such a grind mentally and physically throughout the entire year, whether it's 150 games in the minor leagues or 162 in the major leagues. I think for me, it was just kind of taking my career into my own hands and planning out my day is, okay, this is what I need to do, to make sure my hips are loose and my body's loose for stretch. And then I can, save this time to go over the scouting report with the pitcher and really just kind of take things in my own hands and know that, if it didn't work out, I only had myself to blame. It's not because I, didn't have the right coaches or anything like that.
Yes. Is that, because one question I had that I wanted to spitball with you a little bit of like, what makes a pro, right? And I think you don't have to have played for, the Orioles or Rays or Angels and things like that to act like a professional. And so when I hear you talking about, that you, at the end of the day, took ownership, right? And you weren't reliant on, the coaches had influence, of course, but like you took ownership for your day. Is that one of the key elements of like acting like a professional, like showing up as a professional? Is that one of the key steps you have to get to and choice to make?
Yeah, I think a lot of it's, taking things into your own hands and knowing what you got to do to be the best you want to be or the best you can be. But yeah, I think a lot of times too, it's taking accountability and taking responsibility for what you do on a daily basis and being accountable to your teammates. That's what makes you a professional as well. And being able to be someone that they can rely on. Because that's not only going to translate off the field, it's going to translate onto the field because they know that you got their back and you're prepared and, you're a consistent, like I said, a consistent performer and a consistent person that shows up every day prepared and ready to go.
Yeah, I think that's such a key component because I'm flashing back to a number of other interviews that I've done, right, Anthony? And it's an kind of undervalued statement when you say, like, when you're able to walk into the locker room or clubhouse, whatever, and your teammates look at you and they know you've done your work to give the team the best chance to succeed that night. Doesn't mean you succeed that night or win the game, but that's a heck of a lot from, I call it like accountability. It's like you build the trust, like they know you've done the work, and then hopefully you're able to look back at them and know that they've done their work to position the team to be successful as well.
Yeah. Kind of helps what creates a culture in a locker room, right? It's everybody's got accountability. The ownership comes from the players in the teams that have the best, atmospheres. I've always found those best clubhouses were always player led. And anytime we had to have a meeting or anytime we had to do something, it was players holding other players accountable, for their actions and what we can, and, building off of what we can do to be successful as a team.
Well, and on that note, I'm curious who's one of the best teammates you've had and what made that, that individual so so powerful where you'd name him in this case.
Yeah, I mean, I've had a lot. I think back to I'll just keep going back to the year with the Orioles because it was such a special year in 2023. I think back to some veteran players like James McCann, or Kyle Gibson, who were huge in bringing that clubhouse together. I think just like a lot of small stuff that they would do, they would, have team dinners where we'd get into a city and they'd be like, hey, let's just go out to dinner tonight and just kind of build that team chemistry, team camaraderie a little bit. And they were the guys that you knew that if you had a problem, you could go to them. And they would figure it out. And then they could go to the manager, or the coaching staff, the front office, whoever it was. So they were kind of the rocks of that team, in a lot of ways where you could kind of depend on them to hold things down and also kind of keep everybody in check, keep everybody in line and be that voice for, hey, this is what we do. This is not what we do. And this is how we're going to, reach our goals.
Interesting. I'm curious, how did they handle, because I assume like people went against some of that stuff or did some things that weren't in alignment with some of that stuff, and maybe not at the Orioles, but like other teams. Like, how
Mhm.
did maybe at the Orioles, how did they handle that? Where, because it's all about, you set high expectations, like this is the way we act, just like you said, right? This is what we're going to do, and then people are going to be off from that. And how did they get that like back in alignment, if you will?
Yeah, I think it's more of a case to case basis of, you got to find out how to approach that person in that situation. And a lot of times, if it's whether it's on the field or off the field, I think sometimes it just can be simply a quick conversation like, hey, I saw you didn't run that ball out. Like we're trying to make a playoff push. We're trying to do this. Just make sure you're giving your best effort every day. Just something quick and simple. Like everybody knows at that level, like when you mess up, and a lot of times it just to have somebody reiterate that, especially a teammate rather than a coach, I think is really impactful, because you want to be respected and you want to be accountable, by your peers, not just your coaches, but your peers as well. So I think, that sends a lot stronger message, but it doesn't have to be overbearing.
Very true. Well, when you joined the Orioles, I mean, did they sit you down and say like, this is how we do things here? Or was it, do you just pick it up naturally by watching, or how did that work? Because culture is such an important thing. It's
Yeah.
such a critical thing. And oftentimes like it can be a little bit squishy or unknown. Like sometimes you run out of balls, sometimes you don't. But it sounds like with the Orioles, it's like, no, this is the way we do things. So how was that introduced to you?
Yeah.
How did you pick it up?
So I signed with the Orioles in 2022, and that was the year, that was kind of that transition year into like, okay, our focus is really starting to win games. We're not just developing players through the system. We're really starting to bring our talent up through the ranks and really try and win. So that focus on the little things, and the details was really pushed in day one in spring training. So it was like, hey, this is the expectation that we're going to set for ourselves, doing the little things, running the bases correctly, you know, clean defense, taking care of the baseball, things that we can control on a daily basis. That was really the focus, and that was the expectation. And then that just kind of led into, a good turnaround from 100 loss year in 2021 to, I think above 500 in 2022, and then 2023 winning the AL East. So it happened pretty fast, but it was from that
Amazing.
expectation. Day one said, hey, we are expecting to win, and the way we are going to do this in the AL East is by doing the little things right. And it's not just words. We focus on it and really prepare for it.
So good. It was that from like the manager, or was that like manager plus player, like the influential players? Like how did they
Yeah.
structure
It
that?
was the manager. Yeah, Brandon Hyde really focused on that early in spring training and throughout the year. But I think, as that season went on and then, 2023 came around, I think that's kind of when it bled into the players. And then, like I said, 2023 was just kind of the culmination of where everybody was kind of holding each other accountable. And it really was like the players knew the expectation and how to do things the right way. And it really just kind of took off from there.
That's huge. Well, I
Yeah.
think that's that, I know there's some coaches that listen to this too, right? And that I think guts it takes to like your manager to set the tone and say, this is the expectation. And then he was smart enough to realize that he needs the veterans to buy into that. and then,
Mm-hmm.
and then you start to create that internal accountability, right? And
Yep.
I think it's sometimes scary to set the bar, right? Because then you got to hold it
Mm-hmm.
and have the
Yep.
conversations, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, especially in
So
baseball now
interesting.
too. Yeah, because there's so many teams that, like I said, there's such a discrepancy between the, big market teams and the small market teams. But I think, there's been a lot of strides with a lot of teams that necessarily aren't spending as much now on free agency, and big contract extensions now. But I think they're making strides in towards, doing those little things right. And that wins you games a lot more than it doesn't. So yeah, I think that's kind of how they win on the margins.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing I wanted to chat with you about, because I know the mental game was super important to you, right? And you've alluded to that, already a couple times. And I know during your career, you worked with someone on the mental side of things and kind of help with that. But can you talk a little bit about just, I don't know, what that mental game means to you, how you utilized it, like what areas did you focus on, and how did that help you in your, career?
Yeah, it's been huge. I think we talked about it before. I think it was really something when I started to focus on, I guess I would say the mental side of the game or mental conditioning, whatever you want to call it. That's really kind of when my career took it to the next level. It really started in 2019, early on that season in spring training. I started working with our mental skills coach a little bit. And one of the great pieces of advice he gave me was just, hey, like, why don't you just take, a couple games and really focus on your emotions and just being hyper aware of your emotions throughout that game and just being aware of that. And that was really kind of eye opening for me, and being able to, just be a little more objective and not let my emotions take over, as opposed to, and then being able to just being okay with that initial reaction, and then, hey, let it go. Let's be objective. Let's see things through a clearer lens. And that's something that really kind of helped me, especially as a catcher, because you have to be almost the most objective person on the field, whether you're, because you have to see how the hitter's reacting to the pitchers and vice versa. And it's just, you have to keep the pitcher's emotions under control a lot of times, and be that shoulder for them to lean on, and just be kind of the rock for the defense. So I think that's something that really helped me grow as a catcher and a baseball player in general, and be able to be objective and see things a little bit clearer, and just really kind of, and it's something that takes practice too, right? Like, it's something that we're not going to be perfect all the time. You're going to get angry. Everybody's going to be upset. Big moments, sometimes emotions run high, but at the same time, like I said, if you can keep that even keel, it helps you stay a little more objective and helps you see things a little bit clearer.
I like how you said that too, because there's sometimes a misconception. I was just talking to a group about this where, we think mentally tough, right? Or resilient, or mentally strong, however you want to say it, right? It's almost like this. I have this perception that in the past it should have been like, well, I should be void of like any off the cuff, like emotional reaction, right? It's like, I shouldn't get super angry. I shouldn't get super sad. Like, I shouldn't have this stuff happen. When in reality, it's like, you're going to get emotional as part of the game.
Yeah.
You're going to lose focus. You're going to have your confidence like challenged at certain points. That's okay. But to your point, it's like, how do I recognize that? Look at it objectively and be like, okay, now what do I want to do with that? And the quicker you get to that decisioning, like, the better off you are. So I don't know, what are your thoughts on that? Like, agree, disagree? Like,
no, yeah, for sure. I think it all comes back to that consistency aspect of, like, yeah, sometimes you're going to have outliers. You're going to have times where you get really upset, but I think the more you put into practice what you were just talking about, the more consistent that you're going to be, and be able to kind of check yourself a little bit quicker. I noticed the more that I was actually working on that side and working on those skills, the quicker I was able to kind of snap myself out of things and be like, and the emotions kind of calm down a lot quicker within that moment. And a lot of times, sometimes I wouldn't even have, like, where, in years past, I would have a bigger reaction, emotional reaction. And now I can kind of regulate myself in that moment. And like I said, it just takes practice, and it's something that it's a constant struggle with a lot of people, especially myself, because we're obviously very ultra competitive. We want to win, and sometimes emotions are on high, and that's just the way it is. But the more you can practice on kind of seeing things a little more objectively, at least in my case, that's something that really helped me.
I love that. Well, and when you look back at, playing days as well, it sounds like this mental skills coordinator was like, or, individual was super impactful. I'm curious too, because we talked about kind of players that you've, played with, stuff like that, but who's one of the best coaches you had, and how did that individual help you in your journey and path?
Yeah, I've had a lot of great coaches. I think when I think back, I've had a lot of, good connections. One of the coaches that I really think back to is one of my catching coaches, Jose Molina. He was someone with the Angels that really kind of gave me confidence in who I was and helped kind of like just build me up as a person. Cause, like we talked about earlier, first getting into the big leagues and being that, rookie and in a locker room full of superstars and guys making, lifetime money on big contracts, it was kind of tough. But at the same time, like he was the one that was like, hey, you're our guy. Like, as long as you catch a good game, handle the pitching staff, whatever offense you have right now is kind of a bonus. So that just kind of put my mind at ease. It's like, okay, I can control that. I can do that and just really be able to kind of build off of that and just give me, the confidence that I needed in that moment, especially as a young player in the big leagues. And it's just someone that I tried to do, as my career went on, I tried to help other players that I saw in similar situations. Like, hey, I know a lot of it can seem daunting, but you just focus on this right now and you don't have to worry about anything else and just, try and help build other people up around me. And that's something that was really valuable that I took from him.
Hey, that's awesome. And he's got the experience, right? He did it.
Yeah.
So to be able to learn from a guy like that, who sounds like he fit the model you described earlier, right? Of like even keel, obviously talented, right? But I mean, he did the work as well. So he ultimately has that respect because he's done it first of all, right? And then to be able to translate that to you of like where to focus, I think is such a valuable skill as a coach to have.
Absolutely. Especially too, as a young player, it can be really lonely at times if, you're not performing right when you first get up there, and to have people that you can rely on and good teammates, good coaches that you can kind of talk to in those tough situations is huge, and know that, they have your back is something that kind of keeps you going.
Absolutely. I'm curious, did you ever, I don't know, like hesitate asking for help, or did you just become more comfortable as you started trusting the coaches and players, or were you naturally like, I need help, I'm going to go ask and figure out what I need? Like, how did you evolve over that from like even high school to collegiate level to, pro level? How did that evolve for you?
Yeah, a lot of it was experience, but a lot of it was trying to educate myself on different aspects of the game, whether it's biomechanics on the hitting side, on the pitching side, you know, catching things. I think a lot of it is having a base understanding, base knowledge of what you're trying to accomplish, but also that way it kind of helps you to know who to ask questions to, because once you get to a certain point, there's going to be a lot of people giving you advice from different areas, and you got to kind of sort through that and understand what's good advice and what's bad advice. So, again, I think, the experience helps with that because you've seen a lot of coaches, you've talked to a lot of coaches, but having a base understanding of who you are as a player first, and then what you're trying to accomplish, I think kind of helps sort through that a little bit and helps you kind of see what the trusted voices are around you. At least that was my experience, and helped me grow because I had to kind of evolve as my career went on, different hitting technique styles and training habits and things like that. And it's just because it's an ever evolving game. So you kind of have to keep, it's a keeping up with the Joneses type mentality of like, okay, like, is this new style of hitting? Is that, applicable to what I'm trying to accomplish right now within my career? Is it worth trying to do that, make that transition at this point? And it's a lot to sort through, but at the same time, like I said, I think having a base understanding of the type of player you are and, who you are as a person, I think is huge.
Yeah, I love that perspective. It's kind of that vision again of what am I trying to accomplish? Where am I trying to go?
Mm-hmm.
A curiosity, as I hear, is the word I put on it, of a curiosity to understand like what's out there and how does this work and how does that work? And then a strategic side where it's like, if I decide that that's in alignment with like what I want and where I'm going, then strategic and who do I need to involve to get to the quickest answer like
Yep.
possible, right? Or transition as quick as possible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Love
And
that.
sometimes too, I think some of the best coaches don't even need to give you specific advice. They just need to be there for you. They just need to be sometimes in your toughest days throughout the season, it inevitably happens to everybody. Like you just need somebody to vent to at some time or another. You just need someone to be a listening ear. So, some of the best coaches, in those moments don't even give you any advice. They just listen to you. And I think that's huge as well.
Very true. Yeah, I'm reminded of my wife's out here. She'll hear me say this, I'm sure, but she's trying to train me. I'm still work in progress, Anthony, but it's like when she needs to say something, it's like, ask the question, do you want me to listen or do you want me to solve it?
Yeah.
So I still try to solve too much as a male, but I'm learning. I'm trying, darn it.
No, I'm right there with you.
Good. All right. I got to ask you this, and then I have one last question for you. Best hit you've ever had?
Best hit. I think so. In 2019, I got traded from Tampa to back to the Angels, actually, funny enough. And then my first game with the Angels was in Fenway Park and I think it was in either July or August. But anyways, like I showed up right at game time, walking through the concourse with my bags, and it was kind of funny, but ended up coming to the game late, pinch hit and got the game-winning RBI hit in the 10th inning. So that was probably my coolest moment offensively. Like just because it was one of those moments where I was like, I don't even have my own gear right now. Let's just go out there. It's fun. Whatever. Let's just throw it out there. It was just kind of a let's see what happens moment, and it inevitably helped me.
That's so good. You're out there on the flip flops and no hat and sleeves, I'm sure.
I had to borrow. I didn't have any red catcher's gear, so I had to borrow the other catcher who actually got hurt. That's why I went up. But he's like, here, just wear mine. And he's a lot bigger guy than me, so it's like 2 sizes too big for me, and it's flopping everywhere. But yeah, it was awesome. it was still a memorable moment.
Heck yeah, that's amazing. Well, and it kind of like you get in that place of like you play loose and you're kind of like, whatever happens. I just got here. So, and then good things happen when you play loose. So
yeah,
that's
exactly.
so good. So good. Last question I have for you today is, we work with a lot of athletes that are, got dreams of playing at the next level, right? Not again, next level is relative, right? It could be, I want to make varsity in high school, right? And I'm on JV now, or it might be I want to go play collegiately or, hopefully professionally one day. It means a lot of different things to different people. But what advice would you give them so that they're positioned to have the best chance to succeed and have that opportunity?
I think just being able to stack small wins. I go back to that same mental performance coach I had with Tampa Bay, and something that was huge for me was he would say this all the time. He'd go a little by little, a little becomes a lot. So he would say, and it's just that same idea of, you get 1% better every day, or you stack small wins. Just have something attainable that you can do that's productive, whether it's that day, that week, that month, but able to stack those small wins. It's ultimately you're going to look back, a year from now and be able to be like, wow, I made a lot of progress in that area. Yes. But it's also helps you be process oriented and helps you be goal oriented, in something that you can attain and achieve, in the short term. It's great to have those long-term goals. It's awesome. I love that. And it's something I always had myself, but I think if I would go back, I would tell my younger self, hey, just focus on that small thing, that small goal that you have to do that day or that week, and focus on that, because that'll help you get to where you want to be.
Such great advice. Little by little, little becomes a lot. Did I say it right?
Yeah. He said it all the time. He would say it almost every day. So it's something that kind of stuck with me.
I think that's fabulous, right? It's the small things get you where you want to go. And the more, to use your word, consistent that you can be as an athlete in school, in like every area of life with those small things, the better off you're going to be. And I tell you that from a business perspective. I tell you from a sports perspective now, I'm kind of being on the other side.
Mhm.
That is solid advice, everyone. So if you haven't written that down, you need to pause this, go back about 30 seconds, re-listen to that again and write it down, and then start to take action on it. So Anthony, I can't thank you enough for spending time with me. I could talk to you for hours. I know we talked right before this that, hopefully I'll see you here in a couple of weeks in Omaha as we go celebrate both our former coaches last year before retirement, and he rides off into the sunset. But I just can't thank you enough for spending time with me today.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. It's been awesome, and I love what you guys are doing at Pro Athlete Advantage, and it's really cool to see that mental side of the game and mental health really being pushed to the forefront. It's awesome.
It's huge when you're a huge proponent for it. So everyone, listen, I'm going to put links so you can connect with Anthony afterwards to go follow him, kind of follow on his journey, go check him out, research him, understand his path and where he's been. And please share this with your family and friends. Tell them about this interview. All your baseball aficionados, whether you're, Rays, Angels, Orioles, Tigers, it does not matter. Please share this interview. And we cannot wait to see you on the next Masters of the Game interview. Have a great day, everybody.